In this video, plastic is white, spray paint is red, my hands are shaky, I try to do burnout. I finally found the missing 10mm socket, and my camera has myopia. Hello guys, welcome to the garage. It's been a while. I hope you guys are doing well. Yep, it's another Hachiroku. This time is a FUJIMI kit. I know. I have built more AE86s than any other cars on this channel. I might as well change its name to This Guy Only Built AE86. At least that's what it seems. Yeah. So let's talk about the FUJIMI kit. What do I think about the FUJIMI kit? Well, they have a lot of selections: tuned cars, JDM cars, vintage cars. If you are into that kind of things, then FUJIMI is your best friend. But do they have the best fitment? No. Are their productions accurate to the real car? No. But they are the only company that makes this particular model, so you don't have any choices if you wanna build an AE86 Coupe. If Aoshima or Tamiya manufactures this kit, I will buy 10 of them. Maybe not that many, but you know what I mean. No? No, you don't? Okay. Back to the build. My plan for this kit is not to make it a shiny or brand new super clean showroom bling bling garage queen. I am actually gonna do the exact opposite. I'm gonna make it a project car. A car that is a project but it's a running project. That kind of project car. You will see what I mean. So right now I'm just working on the usual stuff, removing the mold lines with the sanding sponge. I'm using 600 grit sanding sponge from Tamiya. Really love using their stuff. I am also giving the body a good round of sanding so the primer will have a better surface to stick onto. The panel lines are also re-scribed, especially around the doors, the hood and the trunk. The deeper panel lines will give the model a little more dimension. After the initial steps of preparation, the first coat of primer is then applied. This coat is basically applied to check for flaws and missed mold lines, so a few light coats will do the job. Now all of the mold lines have been cleaned, but I noticed that the side molding is a bit too big and too wide. Instead of rebuilding them, I decided to remove them altogether, so no side moldings. After 5 hours of sanding, I gave the body a good wash in the sink. Then I apply another coat of grey primer. I think it looks a lot better without the side moldings, don't you think? Now the body is ready for paint. Let's go ahead and prepare the rest of the part. To remove parts from the sprue, I use a pair of side cutters. The one I'm using at the moment is made by 9 Steps Industries. They make a lot of modeling tools and this is one of their side cutters. I have been using my $4 side cutters I bought on Amazon for a while now, so it's interesting to try out other brands from other manufacturers. This one feels pretty solid to hold in the hand. It's a double blade design, so the cutting power is definitely there. It's also pretty sharp. You can still hear that nice clicking, clacking, cutting sound, but it's not as loud because the blades on this one are sharper and thinner. This is a pretty good pair of cutters for your general modeling use, and I will mostly use this on thicker and larger runners. One thing about building these model cars is that it doesn't matter how sharp these cutters are, these parts will require further cleaning, especially when you have a FUJIMI kit like this one. But does having a good set of nippers help? Yes, it does. The one I'm currently using is from Rhodan. It's probably the sharpest pair of nippers I've ever tried. I can barely hear any clicks when I make the cut, mainly because this is the single blade design, just like that expensive one from God Hand. Unlike the double blades, the single-bladed cutters don't squeeze the plastic when you make the cut. One side of the cutter is a sharp hobby blade and the other side is a flat surface. It's like having a hobby knife and a cutting mat in one single tool. When I'm cutting, I'm barely using any force. The blades do all the work. I can definitely see myself using this pair for cutting smaller parts of the sprues because the thinner blades are great for getting to tight places. I wouldn't want to use these on thicker runners as I might run the risk of damaging the blades. I have never used the God Hand premium nippers before, but I guess the experience is pretty close. It even comes with a protective cover for the blades and a nice container for storage. Please keep in mind, this is not a comparison. There are two different types of nippers. One is for general use and the other one is for more delicate work. Anyway, I want to thank both 9 Steps and Rhodan for sending me some of their nice tools to try out. I will leave the links in the description in case you want to check out their products. Now back to painting, and I'll start with the body. The body was already primed in the earlier stage, but I'm gonna prime it one more time in white. I usually use white primer because it will work better with the lighter color base coats. You don't actually have to reprime it if you're gonna paint it in dark colors. It's not gonna make much of a difference. When the primer is dried, I then use 2000 grit sandpaper to remove any dust and debris before painting the first coat. I'm using water as a lubricant so I don't sand through the primer. I don't need a mirror-like finish, but the surface has to be cleaned and smooth. The spray can I'm using is from Tamiya. You might have noticed that most of my cars are painted with a spray can. My reasons are rather simple. It's more convenient to use a spray can. I don't need to think about the airbrush pressure, the thinning ratio, and all the other stuff. I'm just lazy, that's all. Another reason is speed. With a spray can, I can finish painting one coat in 20 seconds or less. It would take me much longer if I am to airbrush one good coat. I don't really want a car to be exposed to dust and debris, especially when the paint is still wet. How many times you think a paint job is going pretty well, but then out of nowhere, a tiny piece of fabric mysteriously found its way onto the paint. So the quicker I can get it painted, the less chances it will happen. Plus, the airbrush I use isn't particularly good for painting large surfaces. I found it harder to get a smooth, even finish with the airbrush. Maybe it's the lack of skills or the lack of patience. I don't know. I'm just not good at using an airbrush. I am not an advanced modeler, to be honest. I haven't even tried the 2K clear. I'm still using the Mr. Color Super Clear for my clear coat. I guess I'm an old school kind of guy. I just like to stick to methods that work. If it works, I don't want to change it. But are spray cans more costly? Well, a spray can from Tamiya costs about $7, and one can will last about 2 124 scale bodies. I'm happy to spend that little extra money in exchange of convenience. If I want to get any cheaper than that, I can always decant the entire thing and get more painting out of it. But that is not to say I've never used the airbrush for the body. I have and I will, but I will mostly use it for things that don't require smooth finish. There is only a few small parts I need to paint with a small brush. Sometimes I would use a Gundam marker for small touch-ups. And my favorite tool for painting tiny details on a dashboard is a toothpick. I didn't use the stock Watanabe wheels that came with the kit. Instead, I'm using a set of SSR mesh, which is also made by FUJIMI. When the paint of the body is dried, usually after a few days, the panels that need to be painted black are masked and painted. That includes all the window trims, the bumpers, the front fenders, and the front hood, basically the entire front end. I have said it earlier that I'm gonna go for a project car look. There are many different opinions of how a project car should look like. Some project cars are super rusty, some have dents all over. Different builders will have different concepts and ideas. To me, this is a running project which I can still drive. At least I can still drive it to the parts store and pick up the parts I ordered. As for the current status of the car, it has been sitting in a garage and collecting dust. Some body panels have been fixed and primed, but other panels are still rusty. So that is the general background and the basic descriptions I have in my mind for this build when I started this kit. That's mostly imaginary, of course, as I have never had a Project AE86 in real life, but I will see how it turns out. With the last bit of painting completed, it's time to start the weathering process. And I will start again with the body. The weathering of the body starts with some light pink to imitate faded red. It's an old car, so the original paint is definitely faded after many years of sun damage. And I forgot to mention one thing is that I didn't use clear coat on the body this time. I would usually give the body a good 4 coat of Tamiya TS13 cleared, followed by some super sanding and polishing to make it shiny. But in this case, I just think that clear coating is a bit unnecessary because the car is gonna get weathered up anyway. I'm using some grey panelline wash to make the front bumper look faded. I'm also applying a rust tone effect using Tamiya's panelline accent color in brown, followed by some streaking effect which can be achieved by using a stiff brush. The key to having a natural looking streaking effect is to keep the stroking motion straight, and the direction of the brush only goes one way. That's from the top to the bottom, and only try to use the tip of the brush. If you try to push in too hard, you'll be using the body of the brush. The streaking effect will look too wide and unnatural. Time to apply some heavy rust and chipping. If there is one part of the body that is gonna get most of the rust, especially on these older Toyotas, I guess that part would be the fenders, because the fenders will take a lot of damage from the road and the weathers, so they will most likely get rusted first. The The rusting and chipping effects are applied to areas where I think they will most likely happen, like on the sharp edges and the corners around the car. And when I'm painting the rust, I'm not painting the rust, I'm basically just dabbing. And honestly, I don't know if the rusting I'm doing to this car is actually realistic or not, because this car doesn't exist in real life, but I want it to exist. I have always wanted to have a project car like this. For the second stage of the rusting for the fenders, I'm using pastel powder to imitate thicker pieces of rust. I just place the bigger pieces over the rusty spots on the fenders using some paint as a kind of adhesive, and once it's dried, the rust effect will look a lot more dimensional. And here is the package of the pastel powder. It's actually pastel sticks or bars. These artist pastels are very inexpensive, and the earth tone colors are great for weathering and rusting. If my camera can pick it up, you can actually see the bigger chunks which I have just used for the thicker bits of rust on the fenders. There it is. So the weathering for the body is pretty much complete. Now I will move on to the chassis. Unlike the Aoshima kit, the chassis of the FUJIMI kit has very little details. Most of the details have been molded directly onto the plastic. That's one of the cons of the FUJIMI kit. Nevertheless, I will still apply some weathering to the chassis so it can match the theme of a project car. And I will start with the tires. My idea is to make the tires look worn with some noticeable negative camber pattern on the inside. So basically, one side of the tire is going to be flatter than the other side. To do that, I simply insert a socket through the tire, and then I attach that to a power drill. Then I hold it against a 200 grit sanding stick. It's a bit messy in the end, but I really like how they turned out. I also give the tires a couple coats of earth tone powder to make them look even more used up. For this application, I'm using acrylic paint from Apple Barrel as a bonding agent because the acrylic paint is water-based, so it is safe to be used on rubber. Well, as you can see, the chassis has only a few parts, so the assembly is rather easy, and after a few drops of BSI super glue, it is complete. But it's looking a little flat at the moment, so I'm gonna give it a few different shades of rust tones to make it look more realistic. One thing I want to mention is that the chassis weathering isn't something you have to do for your car. I usually don't, because obviously you're not gonna see much of it when a car is complete. But for this car, I want to give it the whole project car package. That's why I'm trying to do as much as I possibly could. The main focus of the chassis is on the rear axle. It will get a lot more rusty and dusty than the rest of the chassis, so I'll be using my usual pastel powder rust making recipe for this particular part. And in case you are wondering if I'm gonna use clear coat to protect the effect, the answer is no, I don't. Because I want them to stay looking chalky like this, and once they are clear coated, they will look slightly moist even if I spray the flat clear coat. And it wouldn't be an old car without any leaks, would it? Okay, the chassis rendering is complete, except for one thing, which is the exhaust. So now it's time to do something to the exhaust. The original one which came with the kit looks a bit strange. Luckily, I have been saving some used mufflers from past projects. So a good tip for you guys, don't throw away the unused parts. Well, you'll never know when they will come in handy. Now I have a muffler, but I still need to make the tips using aluminium tubes. And yes, I said tips because it's getting 2 of them. Obviously, a car this old, the muffler isn't gonna be new or shiny anymore. You guessed it, it's gonna get rusted out. But rusting a muffler is a little different from rusting a body panel, because the constant temperature changes of the exhaust will create random heat stains. That's why I'm painting some random white stains on the muffler with a small sponge. Once the rest of the rust colors are painted on the muffler, the white paint will show through the rust effect, making the rusty muffler look more realistic. With the exhaust installed, the chassis is officially complete. Now I will move on to the interior. For a car this old, the dashboard is looking a little too clean, so I'm gonna give it some good old cracks. To make the cracks, I am just physically making some cuts across the dashboard with a hobby knife. I actually don't recommend doing this after it has been painted. It should have been done during the preparation stage, because if you make the mistake, it could still be repaired. I just didn't think of doing it back then. The interior usually gets very little attention other than using embossing powder to imitate the carpet texture. By the way, I have a tutorial on how to use embossing powder to create carpet for your model cars, and you're welcome to check it out if you want. I have to say, it's a bit painful to weather a nicely painted interior, but it's gotta flow with the theme of a project car, so yeah. Well, the dashboard is already cracked, so I would imagine the seat would be torn and worn, especially the driver's seat. And since I am a professional mechanic, the best remedy is to patch it with some duct tapes. These mini duct tapes are just masking tapes painted over using a silver Sharpie. Pretty smart, huh? This is a tiny seat belt buckle I built out of styrene. They are fairly simple to make. All you need are some styrene sheets, a sharp hobby knife, and a hand. Maybe 2 hands. the seat belt, I'm using the craft ribbons for the seat belt material, and the metal buckles were purchased on eBay. And I totally forgot the front seat belt. It's not safe to drive, is it? And these tiny tools, they are from my mini garage diorama, which is also a FUJIMI kit. And they are so cute! With all the bits and pieces glued down to the seat, the interior is officially completed. And lastly, we have arrived at the final stage of the build. After the lenses have been painted, I cut out some Hasegawa mirror finish and stick it to the back of the light, followed by the double-sided tapes. When installing the light lenses on this FUJIMI kit, the double-sided tapes will save you from having to clean the glue mess if you make a mistake. Here is a little tips. Well, it's actually my personal preference. I don't apply the license plate decals as they are suggested in the instruction. Instead, I cut out the entire license plate with a hobby knife and stick it to the car using double-sided tapes. And lastly, of course, the windows are also getting their fair share of weathering. That's the end of this build. If you made it this far, I would like to thank you for your time and support. And a huge thank you to those who have been following this channel since the beginning. You guys have been amazing. That's it for this video. I'm gonna take some photos of this car in the mini garage now, so please enjoy the photo presentation, and I will see you guys in my next video.